Greetings, beloved. You know, it's not often that I find myself intimidated and nervous to speak to a crowd, especially a crowd of other queer people. It's not often that I allow grief to cloud my thoughts, but I feel so heartbroken that I am left tongue-tied. If I'm gonna be honest, I feel awkward about being another cisgendered person up here to read off the names of trans and non-binary siblings who didn't survive this year. To be honest, I want to center trans and genderqueer non-binary voices. I want to shrink down and let someone else do this work. I want to use my gender identity as a shield to hide behind. A way for me to get out of owning some of the violence that cisgendered people or religious people do to trans and non-binary and queer people. But in preparing for today, I remembered the words of the poet Andrea Gibson, also known as Andrew Gibby. They were, "You are not weak just because your heart feels so heavy. I have never met a heavy heart that wasn't a phone booth with a red cape inside. Some people will never understand the kind of superpower it takes for some people just to walk outside some days." This is not a time for cisgendered people to be silent. Yes, even gay cisgendered men like me, we have to put the work in to proclaim that trans lives matter too. That genderqueer lives matter. Gendered non-conforming lives matter. You see, dear one, hindsight is 2020. And 2020 was the deadliest year on record for trans and gender non-conforming people. Since then, the last 2 years, we have watched politicians use trans and queer people as props to pass harmful and hateful legislation. We have seen a rise in the violence toward queer and gender non-conforming people. We have seen drag performers practice courage, taking their lives in their own hands just to read books on inclusion to children. For the last 2 years, we have seen straight people and cis people become obsessed with drag race and pose and ballroom culture just to go to the ballot box and vote a different way. And now, yet again, we have to watch as our community gets murdered just for gathering at a queer bar, this time in Colorado. Gathering, just trying to honor and remember the loved ones who were already victims of queer and transphobia themselves. And I have to ask, what kind of a world is it we're living in that they won't even let us gather to remember our dead? So yeah, now is not the time for cisgendered people to be silent. It's not okay just to keep marking these things up as random tragedies while the nation and the world fights over our very being, argues whether or not trans and non-binary youth can make decisions about their own bodies, have ownership over your own lives. Silence cannot be our response. And so, I'm here to read these names and to say I'm sorry and to offer to be a safe person and a better ally to all of those letters that come after the B in our alphabet mafia. To proclaim that the struggle for human rights doesn't end with marriage equality. Rather, we have to continue to fight for our right to exist, to fight for someone just to use the right pronouns for us, to have the freedom to live as we were created to be. We have to do everything in our power to keep your name off this list, to keep the names of our loved ones off this list, to shorten this list to the point where we don't have to continue to gather to read roles of trans and non-binary folks who didn't survive the year. Rather, we need to do the work of protecting each other, standing up for one another, calling out transphobia and queerphobia wherever and whenever we see it. Andrew Gibby once wrote, "There is no such thing as an innocent bystander. Silence rides shotgun where hate goes." So, beloved, we're going to read these names, and while we do, I want to encourage you to allow yourself to feel the weight of it all. To know that these are not just names on a paper, rather these were lives, entire human lives, lost to someone else's silence and someone else's hate. It's going to feel heavy. It's going to feel hard. But beloved, I have to encourage you to not let this be where their story ends. We all have more work to do. We all have more work to do toward eradicating transphobia, queerphobia, and homophobia in whatever ways they present themselves. Let these names be etched into our hearts, and our grief be the reminder of love that we have for each one of them. And then, let that love be the driving force behind your courage to continue the fight. Beloved, let love be the reason that you are seeking out your own gender identity. Let love be the reason you insist on them getting your pronouns right. And specifically to my cisgendered community, let love be the reason we gather back here together next year with a much shorter list. Continue to hold one another accountable for the ways in which our actions have consequences, real life consequences, for our trans and our non-binary and gender queer family. So, we begin this list. Tiffany Banks, 25, Florida. Samaja Billingsley, 33, Florida. A.C. Morrison, 30, South Dakota. Maya Allen, also known as Regina Allen, 35, Wisconsin. Dee Dee Ricks, 33, Detroit. Maddie Hoffman, 47, Pennsylvania. Aaron Lynch, 26, Virginia. Candy Reed, who also went by Camilla, Kansas City. Hayden Davis, 28, Detroit. Maricia, Houston, Texas. Cherry Bush, California. Keisha Geeter, 26, Georgia. Marteza Richmond, 30, Chicago. Kitty Monroe, Tennessee. Shalmani Giselle Marie, 27, Mississippi. Brazil Johnson, Milwaukee. Sasha Mason, 45. Chanel Yella Dior Hemingway, 30. Adria Sequence Morris, 50, Florida. Ray Muscat, Michigan. Fern Feather, 29, Virginia. Ariana Mitchell, Virginia. Mia Love Parker, Pennsylvania. Kenyetta Keisha Webster, 24, Mississippi. Catherine Katie Newhouse, 19, Georgia. Tatiana LaBelle, 33, Chicago. Paloma Vesquez, Texas. Matthew Angelo, Delaware. Naomi Skinner, 25, Michigan. Cypress Ramos, 21, Texas. Duval Princess, Florida. Amari Lee, Pennsylvania. Please take a moment of silence with me. And in the words of RuPaul herself, everybody say love.
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 Everybody say love.
Love.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here. If you would please, I invite you to come up and raise the flag with me. Anybody in the audience?
I have never